Megatron's story begins not as a tyrant or conqueror, but as a humble worker on the metallic world of Cybertron. Born into a society that deeply divided its inhabitants by class, Megatron was a mere miner, toiling in the harshest conditions alongside others who were oppressed by the high-ranking classes. Despite the injustice and inequality that surrounded him, he possessed a natural intelligence, a sharp mind that could see through the system's flaws. But Megatron was not content with simply enduring. Deep inside, a spark of rebellion was born, a belief that Cybertron could be better, that it could be ruled by strength, order, and fairness, not by the corrupt leadership that allowed the rich to flourish at the expense of the working class. As Megatron matured, so did his anger toward the system that had kept him and many others beneath the heel of the powerful elite. Cybertron was on the brink of war, and in the chaotic arena of the gladiator pits, Megatron's rise to power began. Initially, he fought for the sake of personal survival, but over time, he grew in influence, eventually inspiring others with his charisma and radical ideas. Megatron's transformation into a figure of power came not just from his strength in battle, but from his philosophy. He believed that only the strong deserved to lead, and that the weak were meant to be ruled. This view, once rooted in his desire for equality, shifted toward a hunger for dominance. It was in these gladiatorial arenas, with blood spilled and the roar of the crowd around him, that Megatron began to form his first followers. A new ideology was born under his leadership, the Decepticons, a faction that opposed the established order of Cybertron. What began as a revolutionary movement aimed at overthrowing the ruling class soon evolved into a more dangerous ideology of absolute power and conquest. In Megatron's vision, Cybertron's future could only be secured through the destruction of the existing leadership and the imposition of a new regime where power ruled over peace. He began to recruit the disillusioned and the power-hungry, forming a core group of warriors and radicals who shared his vision. But it wasn't long before Megatron realized that his ambition stretched far beyond the borders of Cybertron. He saw the universe as a vast domain awaiting his rule, and the Autobots, led by the noble Optimus Prime, stood in his way. They represented everything Megatron hated, a society built on peace, equality, and cooperation. He would not stop until he crushed them, believing that true power could only exist when all under his control bowed to his will. Thus, the Decepticons were born, not merely as a faction fighting for freedom, but as a force driven by Megatron's vision of absolute control.
Our time has come
and from that moment forward, Megatron's lust for power and his vision of a universe ruled by strength would shape the destiny of Cybertron and beyond, marking the beginning of a war that would tear apart his homeworld, create unbreakable alliances, and spark a conflict that would echo across the galaxies for millennia. As Megatron's influence grew, so did his ruthlessness. Once a gladiator fighting for survival in the pits, he now saw himself as a leader destined to bring about a new order for Cybertron. The more he fought, the more followers he gathered. Initially, they were people like himself, oppressed, disillusioned, and willing to take any opportunity to rise above the system. However, as Megatron's vision became clearer, so did his desire for total domination. The Decepticons were no longer just a group of outcasts fighting for equality. They had become a militarized faction, a force to be reckoned with, all under Megatron's absolute control. The turning point came when Megatron confronted the existing Cybertronian leadership. He was no longer willing to negotiate, nor did he believe in the peaceful resolution of conflicts. In his eyes, Cybertron needed a radical change, one that could only be achieved by dismantling the corrupt regime that had governed the planet for so long. The High Council, a symbol of the old order, became the target of Megatron's ire. With his growing army of Decepticons at his back, Megatron launched a devastating assault on Cybertron's capital. This marked the beginning of the Civil War that would tear the planet apart, forcing all who opposed Megatron to either submit to his power or be crushed beneath his heel. During the early stages of the war, Megatron's tactics were ruthless. He saw no room for compromise or negotiation. His war machine, the Decepticons, was built on the idea that only through force could peace be achieved, a philosophy that was in direct opposition to the Autobots' belief in freedom and harmony. Megatron's plans were not simply to defeat the Autobots, they were to obliterate any hope of a peaceful resolution. Every battle was seen as a necessary step toward his ultimate goal, the total domination of Cybertron. As the conflict raged on, Megatron's leadership and strategic brilliance became evident. His mind was sharp, calculating every move, always staying one step ahead of the Autobots. He used fear as a weapon, manipulating his enemies and allies alike to further his cause. His vision of the universe was one where only the strong survived, and the weak were crushed underfoot. He believed in the survival of the fittest, a doctrine that he imposed on his Decepticons with brutal efficiency. The Autobots, led by Optimus Prime, were his main obstacle. From the start, Megatron's rivalry with Optimus was deeply personal. The two had once fought side by side, believing in a shared cause, but their differing ideologies had torn them apart. Megatron's vision of strength and control was in stark contrast to Optimus's belief in peace and the freedom of all Cybertronians. Over time, their conflicts became more than just a matter of political ideology. It became a battle between two fundamentally opposing worldviews. Despite the Autobots' superior moral standing, Megatron's Decepticons proved to be an incredibly formidable force. He was not only a skilled strategist, but he had also assembled a team of warriors and tacticians who shared his vision of total domination. Starscream, Soundwave, Shockwave, and Devastator were just a few of the key figures in Megatron's arsenal, each serving as a piece of his grand plan to control Cybertron and eventually the entire universe. As the war dragged on, Megatron's cruelty reached new heights. His belief in order through force pushed him to take actions that would have once seemed unthinkable. The destruction of entire cities, the slaughter of civilians, and the absolute annihilation of anyone who stood against him became his trademark. Yet, in the face of such overwhelming power, Megatron was always frustrated by one thing: the resilience of the Autobots. Optimus Prime, though wounded and outnumbered, never gave up the fight, and Bumblebee, Ratchet, Ironhide, and the other Autobots proved time and again that they would sacrifice everything for the freedom of Cybertron. However, even as the Autobots continued to fight back, Megatron's thirst for power grew insatiable. He sought out the Allspark, a powerful artifact that he believed would give him the ultimate power to reshape the universe. His pursuit of the Allspark marked the beginning of a new chapter in the war, one that would take him far from Cybertron and lead him to Earth, where he would face not only the Autobots, but the humans as well. On Earth, Megatron found an entirely new battlefield. It was a world inhabited by fragile but fiercely determined humans, a species that he underestimated at first. But soon, he realized that humans, like Cybertronians, could be manipulated, controlled, and ultimately subjugated to his will. His pursuit of the Allspark on Earth set the stage for the Decepticons' relentless attacks on human cities, and it was here that his rivalry with Optimus Prime reached new heights. The Autobots, determined to protect the humans, followed Megatron to Earth, and the war spilled into the human world in a way that none of them had expected. As Megatron continued to pursue his ultimate goal of total galactic domination, the stakes grew higher. The battle for Cybertron was no longer just about a single planet. It was about the future of the entire universe. With the Allspark in his grasp, Megatron believed that he could reshape the universe in his image, casting aside anyone who dared to stand against him. He was no longer just a leader of a revolution. He was a conqueror, determined to reshape the universe in his vision of strength and order. As the war reached its most devastating point, with entire cities reduced to rubble and the surface of Cybertron itself scarred by endless conflict, Megatron's grip on the planet became undeniable. His pursuit of absolute power and control had led him down a path from which there would be no return. The destruction he wrought was not just physical. It was the soul of Cybertron that was slowly being extinguished under his iron fist. Megatron's once noble vision of overthrowing an oppressive system had evolved into a tyrannical thirst for domination, fueled by pride and an insatiable desire for control. Despite his strategic genius and superior firepower, Megatron found himself increasingly outmatched by the Autobots, especially Optimus Prime. With each passing battle, the Autobots' resolve grew stronger, and their unity became a beacon of hope for all those who sought freedom. Megatron's belief that strength alone could bring order began to falter, as he realized that the strength of the Autobots was not in their power, but in their willingness to fight for each other and for something greater than themselves, the hope for peace and a better future. However, even as his defeat seemed inevitable, Megatron never wavered in his ambition. His hubris and thirst for the Allspark led him to Earth, where he would face the Autobots once more, this time alongside the fragile but fiercely determined humans. His desire to conquer Earth was not just about defeating Optimus Prime.
Megatron.
It was about proving his supremacy, about forcing the entire universe to kneel before him. Yet even on Earth, where his power seemed limitless, Megatron found himself fighting not just Autobots, but an alliance of hope that included humans and Autobots fighting side by side. As Megatron's ultimate goal, the Allspark, slipped further from his grasp, so did his control over the Decepticons. Betrayals from within his own ranks, particularly from figures like Starscream, began to destabilize his leadership, revealing the true weakness of his empire. Megatron, once a symbol of relentless power, now found himself isolated, constantly battling not just the Autobots, but the factions within his own forces who questioned his leadership. In the end, Megatron's fall came not because of a single battle, but because of the weight of his own arrogance. His unwillingness to evolve, to adapt, and to truly understand the power of unity led to his ultimate defeat. Whether through battle or through the internal strife within his own ranks, Megatron's dream of universal domination crumbled before him. Optimus Prime, who had always believed in the value of life and the right to freedom for all, finally triumphed over Megatron's tyranny, proving that hope and unity would always be stronger than the force of a single individual's will. But even as he fell, Megatron's influence continued to linger, like a dark shadow over Cybertron. The legacy of his actions would forever shape the future of the Decepticons and Autobots alike. His ambition may have ended in ruin, but the scars he left on Cybertron were deep. The war he started had destroyed much of his homeworld, leaving it on the brink of collapse. The Decepticons, without their leader, struggled to rebuild, and while Optimus Prime and the Autobots celebrated their victory, they knew that the shadow of Megatron's ambition would not be easily erased. In the end, Megatron's legacy was not just one of destruction, but of the unrelenting pursuit of power and the costs of tyranny. He showed the universe the dangers of unchecked ambition, the consequences of believing that the strong alone should rule, and the destruction that follows when a leader loses sight of what truly matters: freedom, unity, and peace. Though Megatron's reign came to an end, his influence and the ideals he fought for would continue to shape the future of Cybertron and the entire universe. And as long as the Autobots remained, they would carry the torch of freedom, ensuring that no one, especially a tyrant like Megatron, could ever again threaten the balance of peace.